Welcome, listeners, to the latest episode of Last Week with India AI. I'm Sindhuja and I'm joined by my colleague Jibu. Together, we will be bringing to you the latest news, analysis, and insights in the world of AI. Hi, Jibu, and welcome.
Hi, Sindhuja. It's good to be back to the usual podcast after our after Race 2020. Wow, it was such an incredible virtual event,
Yeah.
and it was great covering it with you and the rest of India AI team. Amazing experience. And the scale was massive. We keep speaking about the scale, but the quality was good. Equally brilliant enough. I had 80,000 registrations, 5 days spanning, events with 45 panels, 250 speakers, 145 countries. It was amazing. So now it feels, happy to be back to the normal way of doing things. But I do
Yeah.
miss that exciting phase as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think more than anything, Raise was sort of like an umbrella event, where it really sort of gave you so many insights about so many different aspects of AI. And here I was thinking it's going to be all about responsible AI, but I think the variety of content really sort of surprised me and all the attendees as well. I think one of the most important takeaways from, developing a responsible AI strategy for a company comes back to a very critical aspect of economy building, which is skilling. And I think, that is such an, I would say for a very long time, it's been like a sleeper element when it comes to, economies really investing in it. And I think in the last couple of years with the advent and the rise of AI, the component of skilling has sort of come back into the spotlight. And this is going to be the topic of our podcast today. Jibu and I are going to be talking extensively about the need for good skills, the need for relevant skills today, and consequently how this has a very direct impact on the job market.
Yes, so we are still in a point where there is a lot of skepticism out there. Like whenever you meet a speak to someone who is a non-techie person and conversation, having a conversation, as you can know, I get all passionate and excited about how AI is doing this, AI is doing that.
Yeah.
So then the question is, wow, is it got to take my job away? Like that's a point where the conversation gets a bit awkward. And
Yeah.
one of the best examples of the right answer to that happened like earlier today. So as we know, October is the breast cancer awareness month,
Yes.
and we had a conversation with Dr. Geeta Manchudad of Niramaya Health Analytics. Incredible entrepreneur, researcher. So we were talking about certain studies, how it's so brilliant that their AI models have around 90% sensitivity, and I mean that's an industry high when you consider that regularly it's 70 to 80%, as well as specificity. They have a almost 100%, close to 100% specificity. Now that's another thing, right? Say sensitivity is one thing, specificity is it's very difficult to accomplish that kind of specificity.
Yeah.
Now I was asking her, like, okay, your program is so good, why do you need a radiologist now? You can replace, then she was saying, so that's where we make the mistake. See, AI can have only one thing, right? It can analyze this particular thing and give you an information. Now the radiologist will have more data with him. He will know the patient history. He sees other things. He's the only person. The doctor is the only person who can fit this analysis in the bigger picture.
Yep. Yep.
So that's why we keep saying, this kind of tools, what they do is they make this doctor more productive and make the technology more accessible, things like that. It will reach more people. The cost comes down, the time is saved, those kind of things. So the biggest worry people have is, of course, some of the jobs are gonna be replaced, right? Like, what do you think? Which are the jobs that will be replaced, according to you, Sindhuja?
Well, I mean, it's a very controversial sort of a statement, but I do think we've reached that point, in terms of the AI maturity itself as an industry to really reflect and change the question. The question shouldn't be, will AI take away my job? The question is going to be, what can I upskill to? So that I can
Exactly.
complement AI. And yeah, to answer your question, Jibu, in terms of what jobs can be replaced, I think at some level, I have to think and answer in terms of what jobs can't be replaced, because I think pretty much everything is very
Okay,
replaceable.
now you're scaring me.
But it's true. But I think that this is an opportunity, honestly, to really look at how we can really expand our skill sets. And, I agree with Dr. Manjunath. She's absolutely spot on when she says there's no way you can replace a radiologist. And, if you really look at it, and this is a problem that is not just in India, but it's also in developed countries like the United States, where even their numbers of radiologists are much lesser. If you look at any of their job reports and, research data, it'll tell you very clearly that radiologists are among the highest paid. That's because there's so less of them. There's a very limited number of them. So obviously, the more the radiologists that are there are very handsomely rewarded. But today, it's become, especially in a pandemic situation like this, these are certain jobs that have to be augmented, and that is the only way we can really sort of supplement it. And if you think about it that way, even when it comes to industrial automation, we're seeing a wave of jobs that could possibly become redundant. Like, to answer just with specific to this particular industry, factory workers, for instance. I don't see a lot of factory workers having the kind of jobs that they do today. Specialized contract workers who probably work on very, very sophisticated kind of machinery also these days are finding themselves at the scarier end of, not really being relevant anymore, because machines are doing it. Machines don't get tired. Machines are relentless. They can be made more accurate. But the end of the day, the level of human experience that you bring to the table is something that cannot be matched yet. I mean, we haven't yet reached that point in AI, but this is where I think, the question should be more about how can we really augment the capacities, the capabilities of existing workers like radiologists in healthcare and, shop floor workers in factories, to make them more technology savvy and help make the machine actually deliver to its best potential. So I think that is where I think the conversation should be headed, if you ask me.
Exactly. I think I remember reading your story on N. Chandrasekharan's speech at RACE 2020.
Yeah.
And there is a part, which touched me a lot. Like, we are shifting from an information-driven society to an insight-driven society.
Yeah.
We are moving into a prediction level society. So, I mean, predictive analytics and things like that has been becoming a staple in automation and industry and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's one way, you have it's like, imagine you have a friend with a superpower who can foresee things, but then in the end, you are the one who has to solve these things, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
AI will be like that special friend you have, right? I mean, we have seen this incredible videos of the Tesla cars, which forces accidents,
Yeah.
and but in the end, the steering, we still have to have a human intervene in most cases.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm glad you brought up Tesla. In fact, the Wall Street Journal did a very good story on this, for those who are listening and who have a subscription. Might I remind you, it has a subscription. There are no free articles on that. You should definitely check out the story where I think, Tesla still has concerns about its autonomous driving capabilities. And there is still an element of human intervention that is necessary there, because we still haven't reached that proportion. We still haven't reached that level where we can completely trust the technology to take cognitive decisions and actually put our lives in the hands of it. And therein, I think, something like this really opens a Pandora's box of ethical questions. If something were to go wrong, who's to be blamed? Will you blame Tesla? Will you blame the driver? Or will you blame the person on the road who should make an assumption that it's an automatic car or an autonomous car and should be a lot more careful because there is a scope for error? I mean, there are so many multiple questions that have come up, and I don't think a lot of us have answers to it just yet. I think until we reach that point that we can completely 100% trust technology to do its work, to do the work that it's meant to do, the human element is not going to go away anytime soon. That said, the human element can't continue to function on the capacity it currently has. It has to be smarter. We have to be more involved in terms of what we bring to the table with respect to our jobs. And there has to be a cognitive element to it.
We have mentioned this in previous podcasts also, where some deep expertise is required, right? Domain knowledge might be required. Whenever someone approaches me, for example, a few days back, someone who is working on who has experience in working in CSR area approached me and said, "Hey, I know AI is such a cool technology. Tell me how I can, tell me about it." Then I said, see, there is no point in you learning about everything about AI, right? There's no point in you getting a mastery in various algorithms, learning to code. I mean, even if you're a coder, the thing is, how can you improve? How can you augment you with an
Yeah.
AI so that will transform the activity you are doing right now?
Yeah.
So that's the advice, mostly we want to give people, okay, what do? You are a veterinarian, okay. How can you use an AI to make that thing better?
Yeah.
How, I'm a biology teacher, okay. How can you use AI to make your classes more interesting?
Absolutely.
Or, you can identify your students' skills and their aptitudes and interests better, right?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, that's exactly what N. Chandrasekharan mentioned in his speech at Race 2020, where he said, these systemic shifts that are happening in terms of skilling is not just meant for a data scientist or a software engineer. It is actually meant for the farmer. It's meant for a blue collar worker. It's meant for a teacher. It's meant for everybody in the value chain, and no one's special. And I think that's the beauty of technology like AI, if used right, that it's actually a great leveler. It can bring people up to a certain level of proficiency and actually make them more productive and more useful in their job. And I think when it comes to that whole element of jobs getting redundant, this shouldn't be a shocker, really. I mean, if you look at it, look at the turn of the century when industrialization was at its peak. There were certain jobs that were completely obliterated. There was no scope of those jobs to even come back at all, right? So what I think, however, with AI is that it doesn't have to be a dark road at the end. If pretty much everyone in the value chain can actually understand the potential, the value that AI brings to the table, and can find their niche and their groove to try and upskill themselves in those areas that are relevant to their skill sets, existing skill sets, then they are, adding to the AI becoming that much more stronger, that much more reliable.
I completely agree with you. And speaking about that, see, one problem I have seen is, see, for us, we regularly use these terms AI, machine learning, and for a common person, this is something very difficult to visualize, right? So it's like, I will tell you a good example. So a few days back, I was in a lawyer's office, right? So he's a person I know, an acquaintance, and we were looking at some issue with my own home municipality. We were we we have some of us. It's a little bit like activism, local level, grassroots level activism,
Right.
which I have always part of. So we were doing that, and we came across this court judgment, which came for as a reply to a PIL. So we were looking at this document. I'm like, you know what, dude, I'm not gonna sit and type this thing, especially this is in Malayalam. Okay, and I say my iPad won't support Malayalam phones, and even if I had to use Google's writing tools, it's gonna take time. Then he was like, no, 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 that's not how we do it. He just took up his phone from his pocket. He opened up Google Translate, and he just scanned the whole text. He just took a
Wow.
picture and the whole and extracted the text, and he pasted it in a Google Doc, and he just emailed me the link.
That's
And
fantastic. And
I
this
had
what this
no idea
process
this
would have
tool
taken.
existed.
This whole process what took like 2-3 minutes.
Yep. Two,
Fantastic.
3 minutes. You just take a picture, and so I know that in Google Keep and other applications you have this ability to transcribe your voice,
That's
voice
right.
recording. But this is, I didn't know, and even it has do this something in English, but I didn't know it had the support for local languages. And he was telling this is how we do it. This is a practicing lawyer. So look at how productive he's becoming, right?
Yeah.
And the part is, I thought I will tell him, okay, this is the magic of AI. Then I realized, what, like he feels special about the fact that he have a special tool. I don't want to ruin his that he showed me, and he was very impressed, and so then I thought I shouldn't ruin the merger, saying, this is how it works, is optical character recognition. But it was amazing. And then I realized, like, so many people are using these tools on a regular basis without knowing what is the technology behind it.
Right.
And that's like this augmenting part, right? Human plus AI.
Yeah.
Now look at him. Normally it would have taken him, or he should have a junior or an intern or a clerical
Paralegal.
staff
Yeah.
sitting
Yeah.
and typing these things up, right?
Right.
And that's an easily a 2-hour job,
Yep.
and now it's done in 2 minutes.
Yep. See, I mean, that's the level of proficiency, productivity that you just cannot, have another human to do. And the question is, should we really be wasting our time on these kinds of mundane tasks, which are,
Yep.
which can be made easy if we just use a machine? Shouldn't we instead be using our spatial cognitive abilities, our analytical skills as human beings? Because end of the day, the human brain is the most developed that there is. We have some of the fastest supercomputers, coming out today, is even in countries like India, and they have been studying they have been basically matching the human brain as the gold standard, to come up with that level of complexity, that level of interoperability to really actually deliver that kind of result. So my point is this, if we can actually leave the mundane tasks to the machine, why can't we just focus on something which is a lot more productive, which is a lot more insightful, and actually makes our professional journey more meaningful?
Exactly. Well, we have been doing that for a couple of decades, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we have already outsourced our laundry to washing machines and grinding to grinders and mixers. I mean, okay, remember, I mean, I still, like washing by hands is a very tedious process. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
I know, and it's a physically exhausting process. Now look
Yeah.
at how simply it is, right? You just
Yeah.
put the clothes, the detergent, and you get it like dried, and you get it back, right?
Absolutely.
So that's a quality time you can use for many fulfilling things.
Yeah.
Now I think this is a part where I mean you recently did some work pointing out which will be the jobs that will be coming out of this AI transformation. New jobs that will be created.
Yeah, it's very cool actually, because I mean I've always been making the
Certainly.
case that we can, AI can make us more smarter and can make us more efficient. But what it will also eventually end up doing is actually create and spur a whole new set of jobs, for the future. So let me just take you through some of these, top jobs that I found very interesting, which will really be very big in the future, that is dominated by AI. So one of them, of course, I think is already happening. It's not even something that we need to wait for the future to roll in. It's something called being an ML engineer, which is basically a machine learning engineer. And of course, it requires extremely skilled engineers who can perform these very complex computations, write a lot of great code, and design algorithms. And with the way at which AI is pacing, I think anyone looking to start a career as an ML engineer will be really at the top of the value chain, in terms of employability, and will find himself in demand pretty much across sectors. So I think that's going to be something very interesting. Another one is a BPA programmer. I mean, this was actually something very cool. So BPA stands for Business Process Automation. And the idea is to have a programmer who will basically be that one person who helps achieve that simplicity in process, streamline all these core functions, and ensure that whatever a business process automation is supposed to do is doing its job well. And he's someone who can bring all these core functions together. And in a sense, the job ambit doesn't stop here. There are so many other jobs that can basically originate from here as an offshoot. The third one is my personal favorite, and I think that if the writing gig doesn't work anymore, Jibu, then this is something you and I can consider. It's called being a chatbot copywriter. So as you know, if you open any website today, there's going to be a chatbot that pops up and speaks to you. And in fact, I don't know if I told you this, but when work from home had kicked in, I didn't really have a work desk. I mean, I do now, but back then I decided to try to find something online, and instead of going with Amazon and the usual other e-commerce sites, I thought, let me try something different, and I went online to a lesser known furniture store. Not really known for having an online presence, but there was a bot, and I actually, believe it or not, my entire transaction was done from start to end with the bot. I didn't speak to anybody, and I got my desk delivered in 4 days as promised. No problems at all.
Wow, that's great.
And I found the chatbot itself to be quite, it felt like I was talking to a salesperson in a furniture store. So that is going to be the beauty of a chatbot writer, wherein you can understand the industry you're working in, you can understand the sector that you're working for, and actually build jargon, build conversations, and make it look like as if the bot itself has a personality of an individual that would be working in an industry like that. So it's like bringing soul and bringing some personality and some spunk to the AI. So I think that's something that's very cool. Another one which I think is going to be really big, if it isn't already, is being an AI ethicist. And I think this is something you will personally really like, Jibu. So with so many dialogues and debates around ethical and responsible AI, it's constantly businesses have to consider and outweigh being responsible and being profitable. I mean, both are sort of two sides of the same coin. How do you do it without really tipping the scale, in terms of one favoring the other? And an AI ethicist is going to be that sort of like a moral compass, to a company and ensure that, hey, it's great to make money, but let's not forget being responsible as well. And AI is going to be a big role in that. And finally, of course, a robot technician. And I definitely see this being used in, say, the defense and the space agencies, industrial automation, for instance, where shop floors are going to be dominated with robots, supply chain management, like, when you have these big billion days sale like Flipkart is having right now. And for all you know, there could be robots that are procuring their goods from one end of the warehouse to another. And these procurement centers are fulfillment centers, that they call them, are massive areas. So it's humanly impossible to have people, to lug so many, goods and things around. But it'll be so much easier to deploy robots. But if the robot develops a kink and if it stops working, then what you have to do? So, it's very natural. Any machine can just like have a sudden malfunction and then stop. So a robot technician is one that's going to be apparently a very hot, job in the future. So yeah, these are my top picks, and I think they're very exciting.
When you mentioned that furniture store experience, it reminded me of Google's Project Duplex. I don't know if you remember that. So
I have a vague idea. Tell me more.
So while Google was launching its Pixel 2 smartphone on a Google developer in a Google I/O conference, Sundar Pichai showed this demo of this voice bot making a spa reservation, in salon reservation.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it was speaking like a normal person, and the other person was speaking, and the other person is like, okay, I can give you a booking on Monday, and the bot is like, it's like humming,
Yeah,
it's like,
talking.
Like, what the hell?
Actually speaking, when I was trying to pick out my desk, I was really thinking, am I talking to a bot, or is there an actual person typing there? Because it has the same thing of something is typing, and then it gives you these pauses, which are very typical of a proper human conversation with another person. So I'm like, this is crazy. And I thought something might go wrong. I was, even though I write and cover about AI, there's a bit of that conventional, those drawbacks that you have. And I was thinking, I don't know if this is going to work. And 4 days later, they call and say, ma'am, your desk is here. So I was like, nice.
So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you spoke with a bot or a human pretending to be a bot, or a bot pretending to be human. You go to your desk in time. That's what matters.
Exactly.
So now the question here is like, we have these job opportunities coming out here. We have this, the current economic questions that raise out of this AI transformation and things like that. So now the question is, how do we skill this workforce, right? I mean, we have a golden opportunity. We know, like at least $500 billion we can add easily to our economy in the coming years. But for that, we need something very crucial, that is to build a robust workforce. So how do we do that? How do we get skilling done? What is your thoughts on that?
I feel this is going to have to happen in multiple phases, because it's sort of like, think of it like a brownfield project in a sense. I'm fresh off a conversation with a very cool startup in the industrial automation space, so you can expect these terms like brownfield and greenfield. Brownfield essentially is, where you are given a ready-made project and you're given a lot of these legacy systems to work with, and you have to go and make fixes. And that is so much harder, because as opposed to, literally starting a project from scratch, because you have so much control over the narrative, what you need to do, what you don't need to do, and you can probably expect results faster. So I think it's a bit of both. Like when I look at the current crop of students, and I see so much of buzz around edtech today, and especially in the last 7-8 months, there's been nothing but the boom for edtech companies. Even though other startups were struggling, so to speak, initially, it was the edutech companies that made that was so profitable. So and I know that a lot of companies, a lot of these startups, like for instance QMath, which is a Google-funded edtech startup, which are actually offering coding skills to their teachers as well as their students. So they want their teachers to teach each other as well as other students the skills that are to do with coding. And Byju's is also, started investing in these kinds of ventures. So I think if you start early, you definitely have that first movers advantage. And we all know what happened with White Hat and them trying to basically, introduce the concepts of coding. So I think initial, kinks aside and initial starting troubles aside, it's a long-term future. And I think I'll reflect a little bit on what Ramanathan of Atal Tinkering Labs, Atal Innovation Mission Director.
Atal Innovation Mission, yes.
Yeah, so he spoke about the necessity of driving these skills and starting them young. And basically, by the time these kids graduate and they're out of school or college, they should start thinking on the lines of tech first. that is going to be the the underlying principle. It's like it'll become a foundation of sorts. So I think if you start with that level, then there's more that you can do, and there's more you can augment in terms of their skills. When it comes to older, say, working professionals and mid-career professionals who are looking to sort of ride the bandwagon now, so that they can continue to have a job in the future, at least until they retire, then I think it involves a lot of collaborative efforts. I think universities and organizations need to come together. They need to find ways to collaborate. Universities need to be able to work with companies to figure out the right set of people that they can pick in batches and start upskilling them one by one. Organizations also need to identify skill sets that they want to sort of see thrive in the future, and pick those executives that deserve or want those kinds of courses. In addition, of course, I think universities are more to benefit, because tie-ups with companies is one solution, and generally also just offering these kinds of courses in their platforms and allowing working professionals to upskill, like say on weekends or post work hours, is going to be a huge upscale for them, and it's going to be something that's a win-win, if you ask me. It's tough. It's going back to school is difficult. I'm doing it right now, so I know it's not easy, but it's not. It's actually very fulfilling, because you will bring perspective to these problems as a working professional, even if you have, like, say, 10 to 15 years of experience, and then you go back to school and you try to apply your real life learnings to these, to the skills that are being taught. Then I think the takeaways are that much more. It's going to be definitely a win-win for both.
I have to add something more, because I feel a successful career, or being successful, I feel like what I think Mark Twain has said, like, never let your education interfere with your learning. So
Yeah.
so the learning is a process that's going on, right? I mean, if you look at 10 years back, right? I mean, I had my first computer at home when I think I was 14 or 15, 15, I think. But now, if you like, in few years I picked up, and my parents, right, like my father now use laptop, he use everything. Like smartphone itself is an example, right?
Yeah.
Even I can see my grandmother also checking my WhatsApp status every morning.
Yeah.
So so it has become that kind of thing. Everybody's learning, consciously as well as unconsciously.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
what I have seen, is we have a very, very group of bright minds who has this thing to learn. I mean, if you look at the textbook market in India, especially related to coding, computer science and others, there's always a demand, right? There is always people who wants to improve their skill, learn more, and that's where, and so for example, sometimes we learn languages, like, you learn your French, German, or whatever that is, so you learn a musical instrument. But now you reached a point, like, it's like few years back, everyone was learning typing. Typing was a thing, if you remember. It was a skill. It's a very valuable skill you add in your CV, right? This particular level of typing, that used to be a skill. So now we are in a position where it's like it's a mandated thing that you need to have some sort of knowledge on AI, an overall idea.
Absolutely.
And and so it's not a difficult thing, right? I mean, there are so many. I mean, we are living in this online first world right now, and COVID has just acted as a catalyst and triggered all the process, accelerated all the process. And now you have the webinars, you have the online courses, everything is happening online, and there are so many online courses which you can take up on AI. Like NASCOM Future Skills has an amazing set of courses. Even we India AI did it to had a curated list of courses in our skilling division, and we even wrote articles on other courses as well. It's not about you should check our courses. There are courses. There's an interesting course by the Finland government. Elements of AI. You should take up that, right? So these things are available, and I don't feel like these are a very tedious process. I mean, every professional, whether you are you are a let's say you are in the IT sector or you are in manufacturing sector, it doesn't matter whether if it's a doctor or an accountant. It's important that you understand these concepts and you realize how it can be, like going back to the beginning what we spoke, how these tools can be used to augment their work.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, there isn't any excuse anymore. You can't say you don't have, okay, you can probably say you don't have the time, but I think it comes to your gumption. You can make the time for it. But as far as the
Exactly.
ecosystem is there, everything is literally available. It's not even like, you need to have a tech background to actually be able to understand and study about AI. That's not the case. I don't have a tech background and I'm writing about AI today, and it's not that difficult to follow, barring a few probably technical examples if at best. So like I said, I don't think there are any specific reasons to say that this is not an opportunity to really cash in on. And I think early bird bites the worm, and I think if someone who can essentially capitalize on these existing opportunities, they have a head start. It's really that simple.
Yes, and so that's it from us for this week. We will get more in depth into the job roles of future and skilling and other things in the coming weeks. Sindhuja, always great to have this conversation with you.
Absolutely.
Back
Thank
to
you.
having our weekly dose of AI knowledge exchange, knowledge sharing.
Thank you again for tuning in, everybody. And do follow all the updates on India AI on our LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube channels. Until then, until next time, stay safe and stay connected.